for the introduction. So the last time at Recon, I was presenting InternalBlue, which was a Bluetooth research framework. And in between, I looked into a lot of other things. And then finally, I'm back to Bluetooth research. So why is this? Well, there's a new feature. It's called Find My After Power Off. Sorry, I think, is that better? Yeah, okay. So it's called Find My After Power Off. And yeah, what it does is as follows. So you have your iPhone. It's a new security feature in iOS 15 if you have an iPhone 11, 12, or 13. And it tells you when you turn off your iPhone, or it just turns off because battery is low, it will still be findable using the Find My network. So it's an anti-theft protection. So that's what the text says, even though it's small. Yeah, and if you want to disable this feature, you even have to enter your passcode. So it's really marketed as a security feature. And I was like, hello, tinfoil hat. It's like, still like, no feature I want in a Bluetooth chip, like staying on while the phone is off, no. Okay, but then I was like, okay, first let's look into what it even is intended to do. So is it even a good anti-theft protection? And well, I'm lazy, so I asked my colleague, Alexander, who is an expert with everything Find My, so you can also follow him on Twitter if you want, and he wrote a Python script. So this is just observing all BLE advertisements to see how Find My works when we just shut down an iPhone, or when the battery runs low, before unlock, after unlock, reboot, everything. And this was already quite surprising. So we found out, first of all, advertisements, they roll every 15 minutes, so that's as if the iPhone would be on. Advertisements stop like roughly 5 hours on low battery. So okay, yeah, I mean, at some point the battery is empty maybe. But then if a user shuts down the iPhone after 24 hours, those advertisements stop. And even if you boot the iPhone, it doesn't matter if before the 24 hours or after. If you don't unlock the phone to give it Wi-Fi access or like the SIM card, etc. So if it does not have internet and if it's not unlocked, then the advertisements are still not being sent. And in some conditions, so I had a jailbroken or previously jailbroken iPhone that was in a weird state. So it was showing the dialog that Find My was enabled, but in fact, it did not send any advertisements. And there was no warning shown to the user that it's in fact not working. Just, yeah, in the log you would see a message, but not the user. And this is because there is technical limitations. So Find My works with a so-called master beacon key, and this master beacon key is very powerful. So if an attacker observes this master beacon key, they can calculate all past Find My advertisements, all future advertisements, and basically they can track a person based on this, because with those keys you can also request locations from the Apple servers, so they are very, very sensitive. And as a solution, what Apple did there is they said, okay, on shutdown we generate 96 Find My advertisements that are valid for 15 minutes. That's a total of 24 hours. That's where the 24 hours come from. And we send them to the Bluetooth chip. We also store them in a database that is available before the first unlock. And with this solution, it works for 24 hours, but not longer, to protect your master beacon key. So is it a good anti-theft protection? Well, I don't know. Yeah, maybe not. Okay, so yeah, maybe it's not a good security feature, but what does it do then? Well, there's low power mode, and then I decided to just look a bit more into this, so what it's even doing. Note that low power mode, with this I mean like when the phone is really off. It's not this when your battery turns yellow thing, but internally the Apple developers call it LPM, LEPM, power reserve, and so on, so there's multiple terms. But in most places it's called LPM. So, but this is really when the phone or the main CPU of the iPhone is off, so that we don't confuse terms here. And well, initial reverse engineering is, sorry? Who? No? Okay. All right. So initial reverse engineering, I was very lazy. I just downloaded the latest iOS file, like the full system file. I extracted the firmware, and because I'm experienced reverse engineer, I'm lazy and I only use strings. And then, yeah, I see the patches, so that's very nice. Since the iPhone 11, they have a new format where they include some meta information about patches and which patches were included. So I already see all the names here. So mPath layer, something, something, and then also LPM app, LPM app GATT, LPM app state machine. So yeah, it looks kind of what I expected. I was like, okay, yeah, so yeah, the LPM is in the Bluetooth firmware. It's a patch. I know how this works because there's Cypress Vice SDK 6.2, and they do the same thing when you have an IoT device. So you can, for example, build an IoT device. It runs also this kind of mPath thread. It's the very same semantic. And yeah, not surprising, revising finished. Okay, now I can go after 5 minutes of talking. Not really. Well, next thing I did, many people were asking, like, what does the low power mode do? So I published a blog post. I don't really know how the chip is powered when the phone is off, but I briefly looked into the always-on processor. It has some kind of power module, so probably it's this. I don't know. Published blog post, and well, if you're wrong on the internet, people will correct you. So someone corrected me. Actually, the Bluetooth chip is being powered by the power management unit. And they also said me, like, please look into the data sheets. Well, you can get the data sheets on the internet. You know, there's a repair community around iPhones. So it's very hard to repair iPhones outside of Apple shops, but there's a very big community that shares data sheets mainly for this purpose. And you can get them for free or pretty cheap, depending on which version you're looking into. So yeah, I get the data sheet. Then Stockholm syndrome, something, NFC controller, something. Then I zoom in, I'm like, what the hell? So the NFC controller is now connected directly, hardwired with I2C to the Bluetooth and ultra-wideband chip. Like, what is going on? And like, continuing some tracing, like this is not really what I expected. And find out, so there's the power management unit. It powers NFC with a secure element, Bluetooth and ultra-wideband, all while the iPhone is off, and they are all interconnected. So I see some people making pictures of this, but I have a link at the end of my talk if you want to look into this also. Yeah. And there's further connections, but I would say for like running something while the main CPU is off, wireless chips are the most interesting one because you need to have some form of interaction, some input-output. And when the main CPU is off, how do you do this? Well, probably the best when you're, when it has like some interaction, wireless or other. So yeah, the iPhone is not really sleeping anymore. There's 3 chips running. Okay, that's the state. But what I haven't told you yet is why. So what is this doing when the iPhone is off? What is happening here? So you can look into the Apple platform security guide. It tells you there's something called express cards with power reserve. This has been added, I think, in iOS 12 or even earlier, if I don't know. I remember not correctly, but yeah, some time ago for NFC. And the NFC controller can, like even if the iPhone is off, perform the same transaction, like just using the NFC secure element for a couple of special cards like car keys, home keys, student IDs, transit cards, and so on. And now in iOS 15, something special was added, which is the digital car key 3.0. And this one is no longer based on NFC, but the digital car key 3.0 is used on Bluetooth and ultra-wideband. And because of this feature, there have to be interconnections. And I didn't find much about it, except from some WWDC video that I linked below, where they briefly explain, like, yeah, it is the same now as an NFC key in power reserve mode. You have all those features, and kind of that's it. So I would assume that Find My after power off was not the real thing that they wanted to implement, but what they wanted to implement was digital car key 3.0 support when the phone is off, and then as an additional module, they also added this Find My feature. Now, how do you even enter the low power mode? Well, you go to the party that's after this talk. No, so Find My after 24 hours is working, or for up to 24 hours is working on usually initiated shutdown. You have this dialog shown that I had in the very beginning, and you can opt out of this. And if you press the power button, the phone would turn on again. Then there is an automated shutdown. This is the power reserve. This is a bit special. So it's not user initiated, but the phone is like, I'm on the last % of battery, so I shut down, and then for up to 5 hours, Find My and Express cards and keys are enabled. So this whole digital car key and also your travel card and so on. You don't have a dialog, but you can opt out of the Express card feature in the settings of your phone. And if you press the power button, then you see only the thing that I had on my very first slide. So you see the battery being red and the enabled features below. The basic working principle is like iOS is initializing the firmware on all the LPM-enabled chips, and then the iOS main application processor, also the always-on processor, they all shut down. And then the power management unit is running everything standalone. So AOP, AP are off, Bluetooth in this case is on, other chips as well, and there's some configuration in between. Now I looked into supported devices, and this is also supporting the theory with the digital car key, because what you see here is there are similar chips, for example, in the iPhone 11 and SE 2020, but still the SE 2020, which has the same Bluetooth chip but no ultra-wideband chip, it does not have support for the Find My LPM mode. And also this whole Bluetooth module, it mixes both the digital car key as well as Find My. So probably that's the reason. Maybe they can like make different submodules for this, for different iOS versions, but they haven't done this yet. And I thought, like, what are the attack vectors? So the first one is NFC and the secure element, but that's really hard to get in. So there's a previous hacking attempt where someone broke into the secure bootloader of the PN553 chip, but the one that's used in the iPhones, the SN100 and higher, they are not vulnerable to the same attack. And I think that person was really spending multiple months of research, and then another 15 months from responsible disclosure were passing until the bug was fixed and to be published. So I was like, no, I don't want to do like this NFC stuff here. Now, second idea is ultra-wideband. Well, this firmware is only signed, it's not encrypted, so you can load it into your favorite disassembler and have some analysis. And I also gave a talk at the last year's Black Hat about this. Then I also had a student, he fussed this whole interface and he couldn't find any vulnerabilities. I mean, of course, there might be things that we didn't see, and I think I myself have stared way too long into this. The student also stared way too long into this, I guess, and yeah, I don't know. Also, the attack surface is pretty limited. So first of all, in the car key protocol, first Bluetooth is active, and then it activates the ultra-wideband chip for power-saving reasons. And then ultra-wideband has also no data transfer, it's only measuring a distance. So not sure if it would be good for an attack. But there's Bluetooth. And yeah, as I said, I did a lot of things with Bluetooth, and I also supervised Robert for his thesis, and he wrote everything, like a firmware patch for all iPhones, including the iPhone XS and newer, so it just works to patch the Bluetooth firmware. It has no signature checks, it's not encrypted, you can just patch it as you want. So I can do Bluetooth firmware analysis and even instrumentation. The first thing I did was, again, reading logs from a non-jailbroken iPhone on iOS 15. And there you can even see, after tuning some settings, you can see all the log entries and all the commands being sent to the Bluetooth chip. And these are including a lot of data, including all the MAC addresses from the advertisements for Find My and all the advertisement contents. So this means even if the Bluetooth firmware would be secure, an attacker could now configure Find My advertisements that are, for example, linked to another Find My account. And that means that the owner of the iPhone, so the legitimate owner, would no longer see that their phone is findable via Find My. It appears to be off, but actually someone else, an attacker, can locate it. So still works with stock firmware, nothing to there, like anyone in user space could do this. Of course, you have to have an attacker on the phone already, but yeah, so pretty interesting already. And then there's this patch format, and so Robert reverse engineered this, and you can see there's a couple of CRCs in between, but no signature or anything else that would protect it against modification. So basically now the attacker can write arbitrary things in this firmware. So they could do whatever they want. Of course, Find My is a nice feature that they could customize in a way that it's hard to detect for even like apps like AirGuard, or they could do something else with this that's completely unrelated. And this patch file patcher is also available as part of the Frankenstein repository. I will link that later. So then I did a lot of static analysis again, and then I diffed like more than 2,000 functions. Some of them I named manually, some of them I still double-checked and diffed with other firmware versions, etc. So I have finally names in a bunch of functions. And this is again in the repository, so you can now write C patches for this firmware, so you don't have to mess with assembly. And for the general analysis workflow, what you can do is you can dump the Bluetooth ROM with InternalBlue as it is. Then you can backport the iOS 15 firmware patches because there's, as of now, no public jailbreak for iOS 15. And then you can do static analysis in the patches if you want and modify them because there's some security limitations. So only the patch is disabling certain features that you would want for analysis, like writing to the RAM, which is just nice if you can do that. And then you can load those patches. So that means you have like this blue box that's the old dump, and then you have these patches. They have a mechanism called patch RAM, which is similar to breakpoints, where you can override temporarily in the ROM some hooks so that you would execute code in RAM instead of in ROM. And you can just instrument all of this using InternalBlue and then set breakpoints, analyze memory contents while firmware is executed, and so on. Now, next thing is running the backported firmware. So, of course, we are on iOS 14 point something or even older, but I wouldn't make the firmware difference too large compared to what you're analyzing. And Apple has an internal tool, it's called Blue that's already pre-installed on all iPhones without jailbreak. And it's not documented, but with this you can just load, with the commands shown here, custom firmware. And then you could initialize this firmware with the same low power mode commands, which is very nice because now you can, for example, see where those advertisements are configured in RAM, like which address they are loaded to, how they are accessed. You can even send all of those initialization commands except from the last one and set breakpoints to see like if certain code points are reached. And the very last one, it's a bit a pity because the last one, it terminates communication between the Bluetooth chip and the Bluetooth daemon. You can do that, but in this case, the Bluetooth daemon on iOS 14 will realize, hey, my chip is gone, I have to reset it, and then it performs a reset on the chip, and then all your custom patches are gone. So, but still, it's very useful for analysis to run some backported firmware without backporting anything else on the system. Yeah, and this is a bit of the analysis that you can see here. So this is like the handler for configuring all the advertisements. And there is also some functions that are not used by the current Find My setup. Maybe that's for the car key, maybe it's yet another thing, I don't know. But I just started naming a lot of functions in this low power module from there. And then there's one last thing that I did is to enable the write RAM, because that's very nice, so that I can set breakpoints in RAM in the region, for example, where the low power mode module is, etc. And basically, so what you can see here is the patch file, which has the CRC. So you have to recalculate the CRCs after removing the command that I shown here in red, or you just change the comparison to just to another value, and that's it already. And yeah, then, well, I would have liked to look way more like into this whole LPM firmware, to be honest, but there's a few things that I cannot really research with this backported thing. So, well, of course, there's the BLE advertisements, find my stuff, but the module does a lot of other things, like scanning for other devices. It has a couple of GATT services, and I think that's like all used for the digital car key. And well, so you would have to backport the NFC firmware, also the ultra-wideband firmware, but I have tried on one phone to downgrade ultra-wideband firmware, and it didn't work, and I fear that when I try to upgrade it and it succeeds, then I might break my phone or something, so I'm a bit scared of this. Also, there's a lot of stuff in user space, like there's an NFC secure element applet that is loaded for the digital car key, but only if you have configured a car and stuff like this. So many user space daemons that have changes in iOS 15, so it's the safest to just wait for a real jailbreak for analysis. But yeah, you know, it takes time. We are almost at iOS 16 now. And well, the impact of the firmware modification, first of all, means like malicious Bluetooth firmware could be installed. The only protection is the CRC. And this also means that there is, if someone has code execution on your system, so I don't know, NSO hacked your phone, and now they can also execute code on the Bluetooth chip after power off. The next thing is, and that's probably cool for all the reverse engineers here, is on. Okay, but this one is not on. Okay, yeah, all right. So yeah, the impact of the firmware modification, it really is powerful for you as a reverse engineer. So the firmware, you can now modify it and install your own patches for testing. And so we bring back all the tooling for the most recent series of iPhones. And because the iPhone 13 has the same Bluetooth chip, it will work on this. I mean, there is no iOS 15 jailbreak, but as soon as there is one, you can even experiment with the latest iPhone. So that will be really, really fun. And all those projects are here on the GitHub URL. So what have we achieved here? So first of all, I have shown that this Find My After Power Off feature is really not good for anti-theft. So after 24 hours, it stops broadcasting. It's not what you think it would do when you see this super secure dialog. And also, I mean, the guarantee, like you think you turn off your phone in some situations, sometimes it's even, you have to turn it off for security reasons, someone tells you, I don't know. But the phone is not really off, and that might be an issue for any high-value targets. So not for the average user, I guess, but either if you're paranoid and wear tinfoil hats, or if you're like a real target, that might be an issue for you. And also a thing that I think is interesting here is we have direct connections now between ultra-wideband and Bluetooth. So the thing here is that now chips might interact with each other in ways that are less protected. So we have a hardware interface that is bypassing any protection by the operating system. And I have shown in a different work at Black Hat 2 years ago that you can, for example, get code execution from Bluetooth to Wi-Fi. And these interconnections are really dangerous and could introduce similar bugs. And with this, I'm handing over to the Q&A. Please note I also linked a paper in the very bottom, so if you have more questions, it might also be there. And the GitHub URLs, or you can just drop me Twitter DMs and so on.